Sports Talk with Player Agent 3, my next guest. And before I introduce my next guest, I kind of want to preface my comments because what I'm about to say is totally my opinion. All right. This is probably the best wide receiver in the history of the ACC. All right. Now I can't, I'm going to go back and say the best wide receiver that I've seen in the ACC and one of the best wide receivers in college football has ever seen, Mr. Clarkston Hines. What's going on, bro?
Hey, I appreciate the intro. That was very kind of you. When you get my age, you appreciate all the love you can receive. So I appreciate it.
Hold on one second, Clarkston. Let me get this thing situated right here. All right, man. So I appreciate it, man. So how you and the family holding up during this pandemic?
We're doing great. We're doing great. We've got the four boys are doing great. Young men now, and they've been staying healthy and everything. And so, yeah, we're doing fantastic.
Okay. Like I said, man, it's such an honor, man, to have you on the show, man. You were, gosh, man, you know what? I'm a quick story. Probably when I was around 10, I think I was around 10 years old, man, and I was playing in the Mighty Mikes in the Pee Wee football, right? And I'm from the Raleigh-Durham area, so they used to take us to the Duke football games. They used to take us to the NC State football games for team bonding. And they took us to the Duke games, and I just kept hearing this name called just like every 5 minutes, Clarkston Hines. Ever since that moment, man, I was like, wow, who is this guy? So ever since that moment, we would go to NC State games, and I would watch you to see what you would do. And then back then, Coach Steve Spurrier had that show on the weekends, all right, where he would talk about, the game, from the previous week, and, your name would come up, man. So, at that point, I knew a legend was in the making.
Well, I appreciate it. Those were some great times. I remember those games that you look up in the stadium, and I think they had something pregame for you guys as well, right?
Yeah.
So I remember going out for warm-ups and seeing all of these young men, out in the stands and things of that nature. So that was some great times. Glad you guys got to come and see some football.
Yeah, before we jump into it, man, today, November 3rd, election day, man, what are your thoughts on this whole voting process?
Yeah, well, I am a political science major in college, so I'm a little bit of a junkie. So I appreciate the uniqueness in this country of being able to participate in a democracy and have the freedom to vote for our leaders. And so I take this time of year very seriously. And I also appreciate the fact that, my grandparents, they weren't allowed to vote up until the Voting Rights Act in '64. So I also appreciate the strides we've made within our communities and things of that nature. So it's a very, very important time of the year, and I hope everybody got to participate in this process by voting.
Right. So Jacksonville, Florida. You come from Jacksonville, Florida, and a lot of people may not know that you were a two-sport athlete or two-sport star coming out of Jacksonville. Why football? What happened with football that pushed you to play college football rather than college basketball?
Well, let me back up a little bit because I'm originally from Chapel Hill.
Oh, okay. Oh, you know what? I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So North Carolina is my home state.
Mhm.
I grew up in the Triangle, and it wasn't until the 11th and 12th grade in high school that I was in Florida.
Okay.
And in Jacksonville. So I tell you, prior to moving to Jacksonville, Florida, my dream was to play college basketball.
Mm-hmm.
You grow up in Chapel Hill with the Tar Heels and the great team, the Field Fords, and Michael Jordans and all of those folks. Basketball and the pickup games in Chapel Hill, were fierce. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up playing a lot of basketball, but I always played football as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it wasn't until I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and became engulfed in that culture down there, man. And people, my joke back in the day was the three most popular sports in Florida: high school football, college football, and pro football.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until then that I was able to participate where we had like preseason camp, and I mean, we literally went to stayed in dorms for a couple of weeks to prepare for the season, right? And it was just taken to a whole nother level. And I stopped growing at about 6 feet. And although I was recruited in basketball, and I got some offers at some universities, football was my better sport, and I got a lot more offers from Division I football teams. So it kind of made the decision easy to choose football.
Now, you're choosing to play at Duke. It's very interesting because Duke is not known as a football powerhouse, and you're playing your senior season in Florida. You got the Florida Gators, you got Georgia, you got Alabama. Some of the well-known football schools. Was it Coach Steve Spurrier that kind of put you over the edge of coming to Duke, or what was that decision like?
Well, going to Duke was more of growing in a household in which your mom is a school teacher more than anything.
Yeah.
Okay. So, my mom, my parents happened to be the first college graduates in their respective families. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So education was extremely important. So when I had the opportunity to go on an athletic scholarship, I was like, wow, well, why don't I go somewhere in which I have the best of both worlds in terms of being able to play sports and football, but also get a quality education. So I went and visited Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, Carolina, and Duke. Those were my 5 schools, and all 5, are really good academically. And everybody in my family went to my parents are Carolina graduates. Okay, and so I think Dick Crum was the coach back then, and Carolina was known as tailback U back in the day.
Yeah, they had some
run.
Yeah.
And so I decided to do things a little bit different. And then in Jacksonville, I went to a private school called the Bowl School, one of the top academic schools in Florida, in Northeast Florida. And so when I had the opportunity to go to Duke on a scholarship, I said, okay, let me go ahead and take advantage of that. I definitely didn't go because of football, because, back in the day, there wasn't a whole lot of success at Duke since the 60s. But I felt like I could be a part of something special and help to, rebuild that program into a top program. So that was sort of my decision making.
Now, if you weren't a football fan, or if you didn't follow the ACC back then, you guys, that aerial attack that you guys had with, I think it was Keith Ewell, was it Walter Jones? And I think the quarterback was Anthony Dilwig. You guys were the greatest show on earth before the St. Louis Rams. How was it playing in that offense for Coach Steve Spurrier?
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, because you mentioned Coach Spurrier. We got lucky and we inherited Coach Spurrier. Okay? Mm-hmm. So when I was recruited to Duke, Steve Sloan was the head coach.
Okay.
And Coach Sloan had the opportunity to leave Duke and become the athletic director at Alabama, his alma mater, because he played for Bear Bryant. So he left Duke voluntarily and then opened up the head coaching position. And since Coach Spurrier had a relationship with our athletic director back then, Tom Butters, because Coach Spurrier had been the offensive coordinator for Duke in 80, 81, and 82, Coach Spurrier, was able to get that job. Mm-hmm. Now, let me tell you something. I only went to one USFL game. You remember the USFL?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Back in the early and mid 80s. Uh-huh. Well, Coach Spurrier was the head coach for the Tampa Bay Bandits of the USFL. Because I went to high school in Jacksonville, Florida, Jacksonville had the Jacksonville Bulls, a part of the USFL. Only game I ever went to was when Coach Spurrier's Bandits came to the Gator Bowl to play the Jacksonville Bulls. Mm-hmm. Now, let me tell you something. The only thing about that game I remember, it was a receiver's dream, man. There was passes all over the field from the Bandits. And so it was ingrained in my head, wow, man, that offense that Coach Spurrier ran, man, is something special. So when he was named the head coach at Duke, I got super excited. I'm like, wow, I play receiver and I'm gonna be able to play in that Spurrier offense. So the light bulb in my head went off and I said to myself, man, I'm gonna prepare for this 1987 season. And our nickname back then was Airball. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's how I got my nickname, the Frequent Flyer.
Okay.
And so, it was our strategy was to set up the run with the pass. Yeah. And we threw the ball all over the place.
All the time, man. And as I look back on those days, man, you guys were, I didn't grow up a Duke fan. I grew up an NC State fan, but I always look forward to watching you guys play, because it was going to be an aerial attack. It was going to be a show. And it seemed like every game you would be the featured receiver, that you would get all the love. Was that, did you see some jealousy amongst some of the other receivers? Because you guys had some good receivers. Keith Ewell was good. Walter Jones was good. You guys had some good players on that team.
Yeah, well, Duke has had a lot of great receivers over the years, and many of them I've been able to establish relationships with. So you mentioned Walter Jones. You have to mention his big brother, Cedric Jones. Mm-hmm. Okay. You had Chris Castor was Player of the Year in the whole ACC in the early 80s when Coach Spurrier was the offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you've had a really good tradition of good receivers. But everyone would say, I think all of my fellow receivers, that Coach Spurrier's offense was an equal opportunity offense. Yeah. Okay. One of the things about Coach is he has a photographic memory. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so he had this unique ability to know and remember your strengths. Okay. So you mentioned Keith Ewell. Well, Keith could flat out run. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Coach would put him in for go routes, and he would stretch the defense and things of that nature. So whatever your strength was, you had the opportunity to show coach what you could do in practice, and he would remember that, and then he would put you in the game to take advantage of your strengths. Mm-hmm. However, if you were someone who you could reliably get open and you were dependable on things of that nature, then you were going to get a lot of passes your way.
Yeah, well, you know, I think I could say for a lot of ACC football fans back then that when you guys came to town, I think Clarkston Hines' name stood out the most, and most of the defenses were preparing for. I mean, they were preparing for, you know, the offense, because you guys had a great offense, but I think your name was at the top of the list during those times.
Well, I was very fortunate at playing that offense, okay? And we broke ACC records. Every year the coach was there, we broke the conference total offense record. You know, 87, 88, 89. Yeah. And as a result, you know, we had record-breaking quarterback play from Steve Slayton, my first quarterback, and I'm sure Snake would say, you know, man, I wish I could have played for Coach Spurrier for more than 1 year. He graduated, and then it was Anthony Dilwig's turn, and Anthony did so well. He was Player of the Year in the ACC. His last year, and then that third year, I had, you know, started out with Billy Ray, but then Dave Brown finished that year. Forgot about Dave Brown. Yeah, and Dave played about 10 years in the NFL as quarterback. So, you know, we had, and then, you know, guys like Roger Boone, you know, he was breaking records in terms of receiving from the backfield. He caught a lot of passes as well. And in fact, only led our team in receptions one of those 3 years. And, you know, so our tight ends were featured. I mentioned running backs. Randy Cuthbert ran for 1,000 yards in '89. Yeah, so yeah, it was just, man, it was a dream being able to play in that offense.
Yeah, it was a great offense, man. But these accolades, man, they don't happen by mistake, man. Just let me read this to you. Three-time first team All ACC, 2-time All American, ACC Player of the Year in 1989, ACC Male Athlete of the Year in 1990, Duke Sports Hall of Fame, ACC 50th anniversary team, and College Football Hall of Fame, Clarkston Hines. This does not happen by mistake. What do you think? What goes through your mind when you hear those accolades?
Just very fortunate and blessed. I mentioned to you how I knew what we were getting when Coach Spurrier was hired. Okay, so I'm like, okay, I'm a receiver. Coach Spurrier's offense is, if I prepare, if I do my part, this could be huge. And I was correct. Now, I had no idea that those types of numbers were going to, take place and things of that nature. So it was a blessing on many fronts to be able to have that much production. And it was a combination of many things. We had great quarterback play. Coach Spurrier is one of the all-time best play callers and offensive gurus of college football history, no doubt. Okay. I tell you one other thing that a lot of people don't know of. The offensive line we had those 3 years, I would say is one of the best offensive lines in Duke history. In Duke history, those guys were solid. Okay, led by Chris Port, who made some All American teams. Was drafted by the Saints. Played several years. One of our captains, Bubba Metz. You know, we had a really good, unheralded offensive line that I was fortunate enough to play with as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, moving forward after your Duke career, man, you were drafted into the NFL with 1990 by the Buffalo Bills, and which I'm sure it was a dream of yours to be able to get drafted into the NFL. What was that experience like? Just being able to get that opportunity to play at the next level.
You know, I tell you something. It was unreal. You know, to be drafted, to get to the NFL, and it's something that I appreciate and things of that nature. But I tell you what, I learned something that just really didn't register with me until later, and that is I tore my ACL my freshman year. Okay. And this was back in '85 when the technology and the surgical techniques and things of that nature weren't on the same level as they are now. So, you know, I remember coming out of surgery and I had they put a cast on my leg for several days, which you don't do anymore. I have a long scar up, you know, so in other words, you know, the arthroscope wasn't used, which is used predominantly now. I didn't have my leg in a machine that move your, you know, bend your leg and stretch your leg in order to decrease scar tissue like they do now. So a lot of things that I didn't have the ability, or I didn't have access to. So, and then the ACL was reattached to my femur, which probably wasn't a good idea as well. Excuse me. So as a result, I tore my ligament a second time. All right. Now, I didn't know back then that when something like that happens, basically you're not gonna have much success as a receiver. You know, you tear your ACL twice. But I didn't know that, and I was able to still come back and have a very productive college career. However, when it was NFL time, I'll never forget being at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis and being on a table and having 10 plus surgeons surround me with my medical chart in their hand. And they're testing my leg and moving it, and you know, where I had my knee injury and stuff, and it was, man, I've never seen that many surgeons in one place. So the fact that I had those injuries impacted me greatly. And in the draft, and I went in the 9th round as a result, and NFL doesn't even have the 9th round anymore. Okay. Yeah. And then when I got to the league, and, you know, back in the day, you mentioned you were an NC State fan. Well, NC State and Clemson, you know, were usually the most talented teams, and you throw Carolina in there as well, the most talented teams in the ACC. This was before Florida State. Okay. And when you get to the NFL, you playing against Clemson, State, and Carolina talent in practice. Yeah. Not to mention in the games. So, man, I needed 2 healthy knees to be able to be successful in the NFL, and I didn't have two healthy knees. You know, I had just one, and so I wasn't. And what happens is that kind of gets into your mind as well. And so as a result, I learned quickly that, you know, this was a good run on that Bills team. And, we, you know, my 1 year with the Bills, we go to the Super Bowl. the lose to the Giants by a missed field goal. But yeah, I quickly learned, hey, it's time to go. It's time to do something else.
And you know, it's interesting that you say that because, you know, me personally, I thought it was a travesty that you did not have a long NFL career, being the player that you were at Duke University. I always wondered, you know, what happened. You know, I mean, this guy was the guy. You know, the records, you know, all the accolades, and I never knew what happened in Buffalo. But, you know, that injury bug, man, that derails a lot of, you know, players' career. And you said that, you know, it messed with your psyche a little. Did you ever think, you know, once you left the Buffalo Bills that you wanted to give it a second try?
No, because once I did play in the World League of American Football 1 year. Okay, the first season of the World League.
Raleigh Durham team.
That's right. The infamous.
It hurt me to see you in that uniform because I came to a game, man, and I'm like, nah, man, not my man.
Well, it was a lot of red for me, a lot of red.
Yeah.
And you remember we played in Carter Finley as well.
Yeah.
Okay?
I came to
so I felt I was like, you know, kind of enemy territory, even though it was our home field. But, you know, and I was able to be, you know, all league for the World League that one season. But I knew then, it's like, look, it's been a great run. I'm not even going to try to play in the NFL anymore. I'm not going to go to the Canadian League. I'm definitely not going to play in the Arena League because there's no sidelines for me to go out of bounds, man. You know, I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Playing in those hockey rinks, and you try to,
man,
you can't escape.
You killed him, man.
Plus, I was, you know, I had a young family. My first son was here, and my wife and I'm like, you know what? This is what my mom was telling me. This is what my parents were telling me about, okay? And so for any young people out there who are, you know, listening to me right now, don't just concentrate on sports. Don't do it. Don't do it. Because at age 23, you know, it was a time for me to leave sports and do something for the next 40 plus years, okay? And fortunately, I listened to my parents, especially my mom, when they were saying, look, you got to do the schoolwork. You gotta get the grades. In fact, they wouldn't let me play sports unless I hit those books and produced those good grades. So I'm so blessed to be able to have that type of direction. And young people just, you know, there's only a small percentage of people in this country who get to play professionally anything. So you gotta have a backup plan. You really shouldn't limit yourself by not concentrating on academics. Can you imagine if I wouldn't have graduated from Duke, if I would have just gone there and man, I'm just, you know, I'm just here to play ball, right? And I have no idea how much it costs to go to Duke, but I know it's not cheap. And you know, it would have been a travesty if I wouldn't have taken advantage of that opportunity. And because I did, I was able to do pretty well professionally and take care of my family. So it's important.
Did you have a conversation with Coach Spurrier? Did you have to get that one last opinion, or, you know, that talk to that, you know, one last person before you made that final decision to walk away from football?
I didn't. I made the decision myself. And once I made the decision to just go ahead and give it up, man, it wasn't hard. Now the transition it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I would be lying if I told you that, you know, it's just, once you hang up those cleats, it's, you know, it's cool. You know,
Mm-hmm.
It's not a big deal. It's a transition when you participate in this team sport. You get your competition fix going. You play in these stadiums like Wallace Wade and Carter Finley and Memorial Stadium in Clemson, and you have all of these people cheering and things of that nature. And then when you walk away from that and you're just, you know, an ordinary Joe. And then let me add something to that, and you alluded to this earlier. Remember when you said, yeah, I thought you would have had greater success. Well, how about walking around and people telling you that?
Yeah.
For years.
It's gotta be hard.
That's not a good feeling at all. Man,
Mm-hmm.
How come you ain't playing anymore?
Yeah.
If I would have gotten, you know, a dollar every time somebody said that walking on the street, man, I could have taken my wife out for a nice dinner, you know, at a high-priced steak restaurant or something.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, man, it doesn't feel good to hear that. So it took a while to transition and to and to be, you know, an everyday husband and everyday father.
Mm-hmm. If you look at the wide receiver position today versus when you played, is there a difference?
Yeah, well, you've got, on one hand, you have better athletes
Mm-hmm.
playing the receiver spot, and you've got, you've got guys. Let me mention someone that I respect greatly, and that's Torrey Holt.
Yeah.
Great, you know, NC State receiver, St. Louis Rams, greatest show on turf. You know, I think Torrey's like maybe 6'1", 6'2", right?
Yeah.
195, 200, something like that. Even that's kind of sort of small today with these guys. I mean, these guys, I mean, you got DK Metcalf out there. Oh my goodness. I mean, he was like a linebacker back in the 80s when I played. But you got guys like that playing receiver, 220, 215, you know, 6'4". It seems like in order to play receiver at Clemson, man, you got to be 6'4", at least 6'3". Long, lanky, can run. So on one hand, you've got, which appears to be a lot better athletes. But on the other hand, they're, in many instances, are not as good of athletes because we got to play basketball.
Mm-hmm. And
hoops was a big factor in my athleticism on the football field. Okay, my jumping ability, my shiftiness, my ability to get separation, I think has a lot to do with my being able to play basketball. And a lot of these cats today, they play one sport. If you play football, you got to be sold out to football. If you play basketball, you got to be sold out to basketball. And I think, unfortunately, I think it, at least a little bit, you know, guys aren't as athletic as they could be by playing football and basketball, for example.
And definitely, if you look at the amount of money the receivers are making today versus when you played, you know, do you ever be like, man, only if my leg had held up, man, I could have, you know, because I mean, not only in the NFL, but the NBA, man, they're giving away millions of dollars, man. Do you ever think about that?
That is a great question. I'm a strong believer that everything happens for a reason. Mm. Okay, strong believer in that. So I don't have this thing in which I'm, you know, angry or, you know, upset or, you know, about not having to, play, NFL or things of that nature for a long period of time, because I think it was meant for me to do what I did in the time that I did it in.
Right.
And so I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for, playing the wisdom you get from playing team sports, and how that was able to translate that in the workforce. Okay, because if you can participate on a football team, and you got 100 guys, 100 different characters and personalities and things of that nature, is such a bonus when you go out into that office and you work for that company. Even if you're self-employed and you have these myriad of customers and things of that nature. So I'm thankful that I played the amount of time that I had, was able to play, and I just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. And another thing too, Clarkston, I got a couple more questions, and I'm gonna let you get out of here. But you got to be thankful for this whole CTE concussion thing that's been going on, man. If you look at the situation, rest in peace to Junior Seau, and a lot of these former NFL players. It's really sad, man. What they're going through, or what they have gone through. What do you think about the whole concussion thing?
Yeah, it's serious. It's definitely something serious, and I'm glad that the NFL and major college football have taken gone the lengths to make the game safer, to increase the protocols, and have an independent non-team physician person at that stadium. Mm-hmm. And if that doctor who's not affiliated with that team says, hey, you can't go back in, you ever see games and you have a player trying to fight to get his helmet back, and they'll take your helmet away now, and they'll keep you out. I remember my son, I had one of my sons play high school football, and he got a concussion his last game, regular season game of his senior year. And so when we went to the doctor, the doctor said, you will not be playing in the playoffs next week, period. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that was traumatic, because my son's team lost, and that was the end of his high school career. Okay. But that wouldn't have happened back in the day. We would have found a way for him to be able to play. So I'm glad that the sport is safer. And you're right. I was fortunate. Although my wife, she wonders, you sure you didn't get hit in the head? She jokes with me every now and then. But the other thing my wife has asked me, well, with all of the knowledge that we have about concussions today, would you have played? Would you have played again? Would you play again? And I have a resounding yes. Okay, I would do it all over again. Okay, the 3-a-day practices before they got outlawed, we had to do 3-a-day practices, and all, not to mention all the 2-a-days and the heat in Jacksonville, Florida, and things of that nature, and in Durham, North Carolina, doing preseason. I do it all again, man. The broken finger, the broken nose, the 2 knees. Well, actually, I tore my ACL twice, but I had 3 knee surgeries and all of that. I do it all again, because it was such a blessing to be able to play that sport and to get a college degree as a result of it. So yeah, I do it all again.
Okay, real quick, with this social climate, man, you have professional athletes now speaking out. A lot of professional athletes are on the front lines, and particularly LeBron James. And then you take a look at a guy like Colin Kaepernick, taking the stand that he did. What do you think about that? And do you think it's a professional athlete's responsibility to do those things?
Yeah, my thing is I believe that to be true to yourself, okay? Be who you are. And if you're someone who is like, listen, here's what I'm passionate about. Here's what I take very seriously, okay? And I am going to use my platform, okay, in order to make a statement, okay? My thing is go for it. Use your platform, and do what you feel you need to do. I tell you, it's pretty amazing at some of these young cats that I call them young cats, mm-hmm. And because they're doing stuff that I would have been. A lot of us would have been during my day. We would have been afraid to, rock mm-hmm. the boat. Things that would be considered not putting the team first and things right. of that nature. So the fact that a lot of folks are using their platform for social justice, and in some instances risking their reputations, it's got to be respected.
Right. Last question, man. I got to ask you this question before you get out of here, man. LeBron James or Michael Jordan? Everybody's been, since The Last Dance came out and the Lakers won their championship, man. LeBron James or Michael Jordan? Who you got?
MJ all day. Do I need to say anything more?
Hey, that's all you need to say.
Okay. All right.
Hey, Clarkston, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. I made it a point, man, to give you your roses while you can still smell them, man. You're one of the best to ever do it. And I think if people don't know it, they need to go back and watch the tapes, and they need to recognize that you were probably the best wide receiver that played in the ACC.
Well, I appreciate it. It was thank you for inviting me, and thank you for thinking of me in that way, and all the kind words and everything. And it's stay safe out there.
All right, man. Again, I appreciate it, man. Hopefully I see you down the road somewhere, but much success. Continue to do your thing in your profession, and I hope to see you again.
All right, I appreciate it. Take it easy.
All right, man. Sports Talk with PlayerAgent3.